Hey guys, we're back, and I know a bunch of you have been waiting for this. I got myself a copy of the World of Tanks miniatures game, and this was given to me to do a review. It's a tabletop skirmish game with tank combat, kind of like a table version of the video game, and it's based on a game from Gale Force 9 that they kind of updated the rules and changed a few things. And we're going to get in and take a look at it. I will say first off, I normally hate these boxes that have the windows on them. Fantasy Flight used it for X-Wing, and WizKids used it for Attack Wing. But these ones, at least the panel is attached to the top, where on those it was literally a piece of plastic inside the insert. So once you took the box top off, you had a big hole in it. But not a fan of those, but I know they want to show off their miniatures. But at least they did a better job of it. Inside the box here, we got a really nice insert with plenty of room. You got these empty compartments here for extra cards, and these two are pretty deep too. And then there's even a spot, I think, under here. So inside the box for the insert, they got a really nice insert here. Plenty of room here for extra cards and expansions. These are pretty empty too, so there's plenty of room there. There is only room for the 4 tanks that came with it, so you're probably not going to use this once you start buying more tanks, or at least get rid of the insert. The cards are kind of snug in there, and they're really difficult to actually get out. They put these little... Oh, I didn't even get them all. They put these little thumb inserts, but they don't go down quite far enough to get your finger under. Same goes with these. They have a little thumb insert here at the very top, which doesn't help you to get the cards down here at the bottom. Not a huge ordeal, but still kind of annoying. So the first thing we have here are our vehicle cards, and you can see they're extremely reflective. You can see me in the camera on there. We have our Panzer IV here. At the top is your weight class and the little ability you get compared to your weight class. You have your nationality up here, image of the tank here, and then some history of the vehicle down here. And we have a Cromwell. Get him to move here. A Sherman. And a T-34. On the flip side of them, we have all of our stats. Again, you have the faction over here, the name of the tank, the tier here, type here, and then your cost. Cost goes into play when you're building a team. A standard game is around 50 points, can range up to about 200 points, depending on what you're playing. Then you have your firepower, which is what you're going to be rolling for attack. It's represented by the sword. Your survivability here, which is your defense, basically. You have your mobility over here, which is how many times you can move. And then your initiative, which is going to affect the order that you get to move and fire. Down here we have our hit points. They range from green to red. Certain abilities take place depending on which of these you're in. And then down here you have your crew that you can assign upgrades to depending on the number of crewmen that are on the vehicle. So in this case we have 4 on the T-34. There you can see there's 5 crewmen on the Sherman. There's 5 crewmen on the Cromwell. And 5 on the Panzer. I like the quality of these cards. They're kind of thick. The high gloss seems like it's going to attract fingerprints though. I would like to sleeve them, but they are a very odd size. I think I checked them and they were around 11 by 8 centimeters. So if you can find a size card sleeve that'll fit them. Other than that though, they seem pretty durable though. I did nick up the edges of mine already, but I think I did it getting them out of here because it's such a tight fit. Next thing we have in here are our custom dice. And these replace the standard dice 6, where 1, 2, and 3 are blank. Then you have a 4 and a 5, which is a penetrating hit logo. And then your 6, which is a critical, is the World of Tanks logo. I think most things in the game max out at 6 dice. So the 6 they give you should be plenty to play, though you probably want a second set so that each side of the table can have their own set of dice and you're not passing them back and forth. Next thing we have here is our damage deck, which again is hard to get out of here, so I'm going to try some finagling. These are a standard 6 1/4, maybe 6 1/2 by 4 centimeter cards. The Fantasy Flight, I think, small sleeves there fit them. But if you're familiar with X-Wing or TAC-Wing, you've probably seen a damage deck before. In most games, when you roll damage and you take damage, a critical just does extra damage or what. And this, critical hits get these cards. And you draw the card, and depending on what it does, in this case it does no extra damage, but your crew's stunned, so it lowers a couple of your stats. The repairable symbol here tells you that you can attempt to repair it on a future turn. And these can range from anything from Lucky Hit here, where it does 2 extra damage. And they also have quotes on here from the game. Looks like it went right through. And you have ammo damage, where you take extra thing. Engine damaged. Turrets jammed, where it can no longer rotate. And various ones. Not all of them are repairable, such as the equipment damaged here. You lose one of your upgrades if you have it, and there's no way to repair this, so it basically counts as 1 damage and so on. Those are kind of neat to add new aspect to the game where you're just not taking just extra damage from critical hits. They have a purpose where they can damage subsystems and things, and it makes it feel like the video game. And next we have the 2 sets of smaller cards here that are down in there. They're a pain to get out. Once you get them out, they come packaged this way, which is kind of unfortunate because most people take them out and are going to open them and start flipping through. But once you do, on the bottom of this one is an open this pack first. So if you read the instructions first, or you happen to see this first, this pack of cards, this is kind of a throwaway card, but this pack of cards here are your basic upgrades. And for your first game, they want you to use just these to upgrade your vehicles. And then once you got a hang for the basic rules and understand things, then you can move on to the more advanced upgrades. One of the neat features about this is when you put these upgrades on your tank, you're actually going to put them face down. So you show up with your pre-made platoons for your game, and you're going to put your tank card down, and you're going to put your upgrades down underneath it. Unless, I don't know if any in this one do, unless you have one like this, which has to be played face up, obviously because it's a visual thing that somebody will notice. Other than that, they're played face down just so you can total up the points. So you can see the amount of points that each upgrade costs on one side. They're also up here. And you can total up the value of the vehicle plus the value of the upgrade showing to know if your opponent's vehicles are within the points limit for the game. Once you use an upgrade, you flip them over to reveal them and your opponents can see, but it kind of gives you some secret info. You don't know what your opponent has until they use it in some cases. I like that the artwork on these is representative of the actual icons in the video game. They did a lot to basically use the exact same artwork, and they all relatively do the same thing as close as they can with the board game mechanics to the way they function in the video game. Then your pack of more advanced cards here. Again, more things directly from the game that allow you to modify and enhance your vehicles. As with everything else, up here in the top right corner is the points cost that you're going to add. Ones with this symbol are usable by any faction. Others have the flags up here to tell you which of the factions can use those vehicles. I'm curious with the using specific flags like that if they're going to limit the future releases of other countries to just the 4 that are in the game, but we'll have to see. And the last thing we have here in this top tray is the tanks themselves. So you can see our Sherman. They're very detailed models. These are pretty much the same ones that were used in the original Tanks game or in Flames of War. The nice thing about these ones is they come pre-assembled. The other ones were miniature model kits where you had to cut them off the spruces and put them together. Those did allow a bit more customization where you can change up some things, but these being pre-assembled are going to bring a lot of new players into the game who were turned off by those model kits. They're also pre-primed. It's weird, it's kind of a textured primer too. I don't know if you can catch it on the camera, but it's not just bare plastic. There's definitely a primer on there, and they're ready to be painted up if you're interested in painting them. The really nice thing about these is that they're completely different enough tanks for each of the nationalities that you can tell them apart even if you're not familiar with tanks or a World War II buff, and you can tell the difference enough to know which one is which in this starter set. I also like the fact that since these are put together at the factory or wherever they're making these, they're done a much better job than I did on mine. I had some gaps where pieces fit together and things. You can see a little bit of one there, but I think that might even be part of the design. But I had gaps in between, like these front plates where the two meet up, and they've done a much better job assembling them than I ever did, so I can't argue with that. And I'm really happy that they went with the Panzer Gray base coat for the German tanks, where the previous line of games from Gale Force 9 went with the khaki like tan from the desert camo. So I like these better. I base coated all mine in this color anyway. Again, it's not a molded plastic, it is a primer on there, which is nice that they went that route, and they're ready to literally take it out of the box and paint up if you want, or you can use them just as they are. With that emptied, we take our insert out, and underneath that, oddly enough, the rule book is at the bottom of the box. It's because they wanted the vehicles to show through that clear top on there. So we have our rule book, and they did a great job of lots of images in here. It explains the anatomy of a card and how everything's laid out on there, the upgrades and how they function, the dice, all the various tokens for the game and how they work. And then they get into playing the game, and there's tons of actual examples in here with pictures to show you various ways to do the movement, to do the shooting. Everything's laid out pretty easy to understand, and like I said, big examples in visual, which help a lot with a tabletop war game. And this is one of those things where I think you can literally open this up, read through the book, and probably be playing the game 10 to 15 minutes after you open the box, and not really have much of an issue. They have a thing in the back here that goes through the phases, through creating your own platoons. They have a suggested layout for your first game, which involves using those cards in that pack that's at open first. There's a couple different layout suggestions for various scenarios. And then on the back you have a quick reference card of your turn sequence and how everything works. Very nice laid out book, pretty easy to understand. The next thing we have in the book here are our tokens. And there are 2 punch boards full of tokens, and they're really easy to punch out, apparently. This one has mostly scenario. You have these little buildings or grass hut roofs here where you're basically looking straight down at the building. So it saves you from needing to get terrain. You can literally punch these out and play right out of the box with some 2D terrain. These larger terrain tiles have a forest on one side, which you can use for cover, or a hill embankment on the other, which you can use basically park a tank up on the hill. And there's rules in there for shooting over the crest of the hill versus being back here. Now the hill provides cover for you. So really neat that they went into depth with that. That's something new for this that I really like. Also have some capture the flag markers on here. Those are used for various scenario games. You have these damage tokens up here, which are used to keep track of damage your vehicles take throughout the course of the game. You have these destroyed markers here, which are used to tell when a vehicle is destroyed. We usually just take the turret off, but you put these on them because they stay in play. They basically become cover at that point. You have our advantage token, which is basically your first player token. This gets handed back and forth depending on various things throughout the game. And then the movement arrow, which movement is an interesting concept in this game, as because tanks are so maneuverable, they can spin in place, they can rotate and go wherever. The way movement works in this game is you place these down anywhere within range of your tank here, and then you can move yourself to the end, and you have to be parallel to the arrow. So you can be parallel this way, you can be parallel this way, and that counts as one move. And then you pick this up and you can do it again, and then you move the tank over here. That's a second move. And I think the T-34 here can do 3 moves. So can the Cromwell. But based on how much you move affects your accuracy with your weapons, and it also affects how easy of a target you are. On our other card here, we have these little tokens here. They look like tank treads with numbers on them. And those are to designate how far you moved, 1, 2, or 3. And you put those next to your token, or next to your tank, so you can keep track of it. Down here we have these numbers. They're up here as well, and these are used to represent if you have multiples of a certain tank in your army. So say you have 2 Panzer IVs, well, maybe their upgrades aren't the same, or maybe one's taken damage and one hasn't. You can punch these out and you put one of them on the card and one of them near the vehicle. And you can designate that that is number 1, and then you have a second one for number 2, and so on. So that you can have multiple of the same vehicle and be able to tell which is which. And these are also color swapped on the front and back, so you can use them as either shade that you want. On this one as well, we have another forest, which again has a hill on the back. And we have another village house, as well as these cool walls. And these are used as basically temporary cover and are placed on the battlefield. They can be used to hide your vehicles behind. However, if they take a hit or a hit passes through, they get destroyed. So that's a neat new piece of terrain to use in your games. And then we just have some more damage counters and destroyed markers on here. And then finally in the bottom of the box we have this little flyer, and this shows all of the releases that are coming out in wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Wave 1 should be out about the time you're seeing this video, and there's a new tank for each faction available. I'm not sure the release order of the others, but if you keep an eye out, you'll see these other releases coming out. And nice variety of tanks coming. The Wave 1, you got the Stug, which is one of my favorite tanks. Love the German tank destroyer. You got SU-100, which is a big Russian tank destroyer. Got the Lee, which I'm not sure how they're going to do in this game, but it has a standard turret. It's almost like a Sherman turret on top. And then it has a heavier, almost a tank destroyer gun in the front. Forgive me, I don't know exactly which are which. I know in the video game, they kind of ignore that tank destroyer gun, which is kind of a shame. So I'm hoping they give it some kind of ability in this to be able to use either or. And then finally we have the Valentine light tank in there, which is a fast little scout, basically. On the flip side of this, they have a little thing about getting codes for the video game. And because you bought this, they have a invite code here. If you're a brand new player to World of Tanks, this gives you a premium T-127 tank, a garage slot, 7 days of premium, and 500 gold. If you're an existing player, you get a code here for 3 days of premium, a large repair kit, extra combat rations, chocolate, pudding tea, and a case of cola for your crews. And obviously I blanked out the code numbers there, but those are nice. And supposedly these releases, as you pick these up, are going to also come with codes that can be redeemed in the video game, which is nice. So I know what you're thinking. By the fact that I just punched out the tokens and things, you probably assume that I have not played the game. Well, I'm actually been a big fan of the predecessor to this, the Tanks game from Gale Force 9. Most of the rules are similar. They've a few upgrades and a few more streamlined things in this, which I like, as well as a few new rules. We did play the game using my existing tank stuff, but using this new rulebook. So I have played according to the new rules, and I like pretty much all of the changes. The only rule I kind of don't much care for in the new version is that you can mix faction the teams, so you no longer have to have an all-German team or an all-American. It's not Axis versus Allies or anything like that. But that is completely understandable in the fact that right now there's only one of each tank in the starter set and one of each tank in the upgrade kits. So you can literally only get a two of each right now as options. So I understand why they did that. It also goes with the video game where all the platoons are mixed anyway. Other than that though, I have no complaints about this new game. I really like the new system. The changes make it really quick and easy to understand and streamlined to play. It is not a historically accurate game, I'll give you that, because you're using dice. So a vehicle that should definitely penetrate another vehicle might bounce off. I mean, maybe it's always a fluke thing that it could happen, but shooting someone point blank in the rear and then you bounce off and do no damage sucks, but it is possible. Also, the way that the movement works puts off some players, as it kind of feels like you could go anywhere and end up anywhere. You kind of have to take that with a grain of salt and assume that the tank is rotating, driving here, turning, driving over here, turning, and just look at it from a perspective of where you start versus where you ended up, not the oddball way that you get the arrows lined up to move your tank around. Those kind of seem weird at first, but it's there for a reason, to keep the game simple and moving along quickly, which it does successfully. I love the fact that you get some basic scenery to set up a battlefield right out of the box without having to invest in a lot of that. The 2D scenery, though, is not for everyone, especially when you have the 3D tank models. And I know a lot of people have built 3D scenery. There's a lot of kits out there you can get to add 3D scenery so that you can get a real depth to your battlefield. Overall, though, I like the game. I like the upgrades and the way that you can custom build your own platoon to your liking, to your play style. I prefer tank destroyers, so I like to build tank destroyer heavy builds, but they are susceptible to fast light tanks that can easily zip in and get around behind them and out of their fireworks. In the end, though, I think it's a great game, and hopefully the popularity of World of Tanks brought to the tabletop will bring a lot of new players into the hobby, as well as the fact that they're pre-assembled and ready to go out of the box. If it looks like something you're interested in, check it out. World of Tank, the miniatures game, should be available for sale by the time this video goes up, so check it out. I will have a link down in the description to the official site for it if you want to know more about it. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.